2 months gone, and I came home to find strangers splashing in my lake like it was theirs. I couldn't even catch my breath. The sand wasn't mine. The pavilions weren't mine. But somehow, my name was everywhere, signed, stamped, praising me for a gift I never gave. Everyone acted like I was some kind of saint who sacrificed everything, while I just stood there with Cain, exhausted, disoriented, wondering if I was losing my mind or being set up for something worse. The first thing you need to understand about me is that I bought this house specifically because nobody else wanted it. A dead-end road, a neglected lake, silence that stretched for miles, perfect for a man who wanted the world to forget him. My name is Daniel Cross, 39 years old, former soldier who just wanted to disappear. But that night, standing in my own yard, surrounded by strangers who believed I had given them my world, I realized disappearing wasn't an option anymore. Someone had rewritten me, and I had no idea how deep the lie went. When the cab slowed down at the end of the dead-end road, I almost didn't recognize my own house. The shingles were the same, the roofline familiar, but the air was different, too loud. For 3 years, this place had been my sanctuary. No traffic, no kids riding bikes, no chatter over fences. Just silence, broken only by the cry of loons or the rustle of pine. That silence was why I bought the property. But stepping out with a cane in one hand and a duffel bag in the other, silence was gone. There was laughter, shouts, a ball whistling through the air. Children sprinted across my backyard. 2 boys dragged an inflatable raft toward the water, while a group of girls built castles in imported white sand. Perfect resort sand. My pulse hammered. This wasn't my homecoming. This was an invasion. Mrs. Patterson, my gray-haired neighbor, leaned out of her sedan window and waved cheerfully. "Isn't it wonderful?" she called. "They've really brought your vision to life." Vision? I shuffled toward the porch, every step heavier. The boards under my feet gleamed, freshly stained. Everything felt scrubbed, staged, wrong. And then I saw it. The sign, taller than me, planted like a monument beside my mailbox. Bronze letters glinting. Sunset Shores Community Beach Project, in gratitude to Daniel Cross. And below, my signature. Perfect, down to the loop in the D. But I hadn't signed anything. Mrs. Patterson appeared beside me, patting my shoulder. Not everyone would give up something so precious for the greater good. You should be proud. I looked past her, at adults lounging under pavilions that hadn't existed 2 months ago, teens volleying over a net strung across my stolen shoreline. I wasn't proud. I was terrified. A boy waved from the dock. "Thank you, Mr. Cross. This is awesome." I didn't wave back, because in that moment, I knew one thing. The world believed I was a generous man, but I hadn't given them a damn thing. I didn't sleep that first night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that monument. Every time the wind shifted, strangers' laughter drifted through my window like ghosts. By morning, I was ready to call my lawyer, the police, anyone. But before I could dial, the phone rang. "Daniel Cross?" The woman's voice was smooth, professional. "This is Linda Barton, HOA president. Tonight, we'll be holding a ceremony to celebrate the completion of the Sunset Shores Beach project. Everyone is expecting you." "Expecting me? You're the guest of honor," she said. "After all, none of this would have been possible without your generosity." Before I could argue, the line went dead. That evening, against every instinct, I sat in a folding chair on imported sand that used to be my backyard. Families I'd never met chatted happily. String lights glowed overhead. A podium and projection screen loomed at the front. Linda Barton appeared in a blazer, gripping the microphone like a preacher. "Ladies and gentlemen, we are here to celebrate not just a project, but a man whose sacrifice will echo for generations. Please welcome our hero, Daniel Cross." The crowd erupted. Applause. Whistles. Dozens of eyes on me. My throat dried to dust. Linda smiled wider. "Before Mr. Cross speaks, let's revisit the vision that made tonight possible." The projector flickered on. At first, it was my face. There I was, standing by the lake. My voice boomed, Private ownership is selfish. True joy comes from sharing. Gasps, then claps. Another shot, me gesturing passionately. A lake locked away serves one man. A lake open serves generations. Clip after clip, my words twisted, stitched from old military interviews. Now sermons about generosity. The final image, me staring into the camera, declaring, a lake kept for oneself is selfishness. A lake shared with neighbors is immortality. The crowd roared, children on shoulders, chanted my name. I sat frozen. Linda gestured to the microphone. Mr. Cross, would you like to say a few words? Legs trembling, I stood, gripped my cane, opened my mouth. There's been a mistake. I never. But a man in the crowd shouted, this is a hero we need. Cheers drowned me. Thank you, Daniel, a woman cried, starting a chant. Within seconds, half the crowd joined. The noise swallowed me whole. Two men in polo shirts stepped forward, smiling but firm. One gripped my arm, steering me back to the podium. They need to hear you, he whispered, but his hand felt like restraint. Linda leaned in, smiling sharp as a blade. Tell them what they need to hear. And I realized it didn't matter what I said. The Real Daniel Cross had no place here. The crowd had already chosen a lie. That night, my kitchen smelled wrong. Not coffee and dust, but bleach and citrus, like someone had scrubbed away my life. On the counter sat a thick folder. My name printed on the tab, Cross Agreement. I opened it. The first page made my stomach drop. Temporary Usage Donation Agreement. Date, 3 weeks before my accident. Granting the HOA rights to my lake for 5 years. My signature at the bottom. Perfect. I flipped through page after page. Approval for pavilion construction. Signed. Authorization of $15,000 contribution. Signed. Every stroke of ink looked like mine, but I'd been unconscious. My hand shook. Coffee spilled across the table. Bleeding tore the documents like it wanted to erase them. I called Jim Morrison, my lawyer. Hours later, we sat in his office. The folder spread across his desk. He examined each page in silence. Finally, he rubbed his temples. Daniel, these are good. Too good. If you didn't sign them, and I believe you, someone went to extraordinary lengths. These aren't forgeries. These are indistinguishable. So prove it, I demanded. Maybe, but it'll take analysts months of work. And the HOA already filed these with the courthouse. On paper, they're real. I stared. How? Because someone made them real. He hesitated before continuing. If we fight this, it'll cost at least $20,000. And even then, the HOA could argue they acted in good faith. People might think you're making it up. I saw in his eyes doubt. The same doubt Linda wanted planted. Daniel. Jim asked softly, are you absolutely certain you didn't sign these? The question sliced me open. I slammed the folder shut, stood, my cane trembling under my grip. I didn't, and if you start thinking otherwise, I'll find someone who believes me. I stormed out, the sunset painting the horizon blood red. If they could forge my name this perfectly, what else could they forge? Maybe even me. The house felt emptier than I remembered. It wasn't the walls or the furniture. It was her. For 2 months, Maya had been living with my sister while I lay unconscious. Now, finally, she was coming home. I stood at the window, cane in hand, staring at the lake that no longer felt like mine. Laughter still drifted from the pavilions outside. Children still played in the sand, and every cheer stabbed to me like a reminder of what I'd lost. Then I heard the car. The door burst open and she came running in, 10 years old, hair tied in messy pigtails, backpack bouncing against her shoulders. Daddy, she cried. I barely caught her as she slammed into me, wrapping her little arms around my waist. For a moment, everything else fell away. The lake, the signs, the lies. All that mattered was the warmth of her hug. I missed you so much, she said into my shirt. But guess what? I've been telling everyone at school about you. They all think you're amazing. My stomach twisted. Amazing. Yeah, They said you're a hero, that you gave the whole neighborhood a beach. My teacher even asked if I could do my class project about you. Her words stabbed deeper than any forged signature ever could. Maya, I said carefully, forcing calm into my voice, where did you hear that? She blinked. From Aunt Claire, from Mrs. Patterson, from everyone. They said you decided to share our lake because you wanted kids like me to have fun. Daddy, it's so cool. Look. She tugged me toward the deck, and I let her lead me, my legs heavy as lead. Outside, the scene was the same nightmare. Kids shrieking with joy, neighbors grilling burgers, strangers lounging in chairs that weren't mine. But this time, Maya saw a wonder where I saw theft. She pointed excitedly at the pier. They built this so I can fish without using a boat. Isn't it great? I forced a smile. My daughter's joy was pure. And yet, it came at the cost of my sanity. That evening, she curled up on the couch with a tablet, working on her school project. I listened from the kitchen as she spoke into the camera, her small voice filled with pride. My dad used to like being alone. He didn't like big crowds. But then something changed. He realized sharing is better than keeping everything for yourself. That's why he gave away our lake. Because he's generous. And because he wants kids to be happy. Her words were like glass under my skin. She didn't know. How could she? To her, this wasn't fraud. It was truth. A truth everyone else had told her while I lay helpless in a hospital bed. I wanted to snatch the tablet away, to erase the video before anyone could see it. But I couldn't. She was too proud. So I let her finish. The next morning, the video was online. It spread faster than anything I'd ever seen. First their classmates, then their parents, then teachers. Within hours, it was bouncing across local forums, then regional groups, then beyond. People weren't just watching a child's school project. They were watching innocence. They were watching my daughter stand on our deck, smiling wide as she described her father's miraculous transformation from recluse to community savior. And for once, it wasn't the fake videos or forged documents doing the damage. It was Maya's honesty. She thought she was helping me. In reality, she'd handed the world more proof that Daniel Cross, the generous donor, was real. But something unexpected happened. In her video, Maya had mentioned things no one else had. Details only she could know. How I used to get nervous at school plays, sitting in the back, so I could leave quickly. How I'd chosen this house because it was far from neighbors. Because I needed quiet. How I'd always told her the world was too loud for me. She thought it made my transformation more inspiring. But to anyone paying close attention, it revealed a massive crack in the story. Because the fake Daniel Cross wasn't just generous. He was consistent. A man who supposedly spent years talking about community, sustainability, and sharing. A man whose philosophy had been slowly building over time. Maya's video suggested the opposite. That my decision had been sudden. Out of character. A flip no one could explain. It was small, almost invisible. But to the right eyes, it was enough. That night, I sat on the couch scrolling through comments. My heart pounded as I saw the shift. Wait a second. If he was always antisocial, how did he suddenly become a community guru? This doesn't line up with his social media posts. The timeline feels off. A handful of skeptics became dozens, then hundreds. Threads popped up dissecting every photo, every post, every forged word attributed to me. By midnight, amateur investigators were crawling through my supposed accounts, tearing at the seams of the fake narrative. And it all started with a 10-year-old girl who thought her father was a hero. I sat beside Maya as she slept that night, her small hand curled around her stuffed bear, the glow of the tablet screen reflected in her glasses on the table, still open to the video that had changed everything. I brushed her hair back from her face, my chest tight with guilt and gratitude. She didn't know it, but she had cracked their story. She had done what I couldn't, made people doubt. For the first time since I'd come home, I felt something other than fear. Hope. But it was fragile. Because if strangers on the internet could start seeing the holes in this fantasy, the people who created it would see them too. And they wouldn't let Maya's truth go unanswered. The first time I typed my own name into the search bar, I thought I was just being paranoid. Maybe I'd find an old news clipping from my service days, or a forgotten social media profile I hadn't deleted. But what I found felt like looking into a mirror that didn't belong to me. Daniel Cross, community development consultant, advocate for shared resources, inspirational speaker. My chest went tight. Page after page filled the screen. Articles, blog posts, quotes in stylized text boxes, photos of me at events I'd never attended, smiling with strangers I'd never met. There I was, standing at a podium with a banner behind me, building stronger communities together. There I was, shaking hands with a mayor from a town I'd never visited. There I was, kayaking with a group of teenagers, grinning like I was the poster boy for youth outreach. Every photo looked real. Too real. The lighting, the angles, the clothes, they were all mine. Some images had clearly been pulled from candid moments, maybe even surveillance. A trip to the grocery store. A stop at the hardware shop. Someone had been watching me, cataloging me, feeding those fragments into a machine that spat out a better version of Daniel Cross. And people believed it. The fake me had thousands of followers across multiple platforms. His posts drip with philosophy. The measure of a man isn't what he keeps, but what he gives. A lake kept private dies alone. A lake shared lives forever. Each line polished, quotable, perfectly aligned with the generous donor persona they'd built for me. My hands shook as I scrolled. The real me had spent years trying to disappear. The fake me was trending. Worse still with the timestamps. Post dated back nearly a year. Long before my accident. Long before the coma. Someone had been laying groundwork for this fraud for months. Maybe longer. Sculpting my identity into something unrecognizable. One post stopped me cold. It was a photo of me, or someone who looked exactly like me, sitting on my deck. Same shirt I owned. Same coffee mug I used every morning. The caption read, "Planning something big. Change is coming." Date: 2 weeks before my accident. I stared at it for so long my eyes blurred. That wasn't me. I knew where I was at night. Kayaking, trying to quiet the voices in my head that never really left after the military. But here was proof I'd supposedly been home, grinning into a camera, whispering secrets to the internet. It felt like the world had split into two versions of me. The man I knew I was, and the man everyone else wanted to believe existed. Maya shuffled into the room, rubbing sleep from her eyes. "Daddy, what are you doing?" I turned the screen toward her. "Look, do you see this?" She leaned closer, squinting. Her little face lit up. "Wow, you're famous." The words cut deep. "That's not me, but it looks like you. That's the point." My voice cracked. "It looks like me, but it isn't." She tilted her head, confused. Children don't understand the terror of identity theft. Not when it's dressed up as praise. "Daddy," she said softly, "if people think you're nice, isn't that good?" I wanted to scream. To tell her that it wasn't good. It was a lie. But looking at her wide eyes, I swallowed the rage. It's not good if it's not true. That night, I dug deeper. Audio clips surfaced, recordings of me giving short speeches. The cadence was perfect. The tone. Even the hesitation in my breathing patterns. But I never said those words. A chill crawled down my spine. This wasn't just forgery. It was technology. Someone had used my voice, spliced it, reshaped it until I was saying things I never believed. The most horrifying discovery came when I found posts made during the coma. Updates written in first person. Thanking the community for support, reaffirming my dedication to the beach project. Even from this hospital bed, I know this dream is bigger than me. Our lake belongs to all of us. Timestamp, 3:15 a.m. on a Tuesday. The same night the hospital records showed I'd been in emergency surgery, unconscious on an operating table. The fake me was more active while I was near death than the real me had been in years. I tried logging in, tried reclaiming my identity. Every password rejected. Every recovery email pointed to addresses I'd never created. The accounts weren't just stolen. They were built without me, protected against me. For the internet, Daniel Cross was no longer a man. He was a brand. a myth, a living sermon about generosity. And I was just the shadow left behind. By dawn, I sat slumped at the desk, the glow of the monitor painting my hollow face. Maya's school video had cracked the narrative, but this was a fortress made of pixels and lies, too strong for me to tear down alone. Somewhere out there, strangers were praising a man who wasn't me, a man who never bled in the sand overseas, a man who never bought a house to escape the noise of the world. They preferred him, and for the first time, I wondered if fighting back even mattered, because the truth didn't seem to matter anymore. The fake Daniel Cross was more real than the one sitting here in the dark. The knock came just after sunrise. 3 sharp raps against the front door. Not neighborly, not casual. Authoritative. I limped to the window, cane tapping against the hardwood, and froze. Linda Barton, flanked by 2 others. Margaret Walsh, the HOA treasurer, her mouth a tight line, and David Chun, the secretary, his posture stiff like a soldier. They weren't smiling. Behind them, I could already see shapes gathering. Neighbors, drifting into my yard as if the knock itself had been a signal. Shadows shifting, whispers carrying. Watching. I opened the door because I had no choice. Daniel, Linda said smoothly, as if she were here to deliver a casserole instead of judgment. We need to talk. Her tone made it clear this wasn't a request. They seated themselves in my living room without waiting for an invitation. The 3 of them perched on the edge of my couch like vultures waiting to pick at a carcass. Linda set a leather folder down on the coffee table with a thud that rattled my lamp. There's been some concerning developments. I didn't sit. I stood with my cane, the distance between us feeling like the last shred of control I had. Concerning for who? Margaret leaned forward, waving a stack of papers inches from my face. For the community. For the families who trusted you. And for us, frankly. These conspiracy theories circulating online, they're undermining everything we built together. I blinked at her. Everything you built. She ignored me. We know about your daughter's video. Sweet girl, but confused. We know about these claims you've been making, that you never agreed to the project, that documents were forged. Daniel, that isn't just irresponsible, it's dangerous. David's voice cut in, sharp and cold. Do you realize how many contracts are in motion? How much money has already been spent? $30,000 in development, permits, labor, equipment, and all of it, tied to your signature. My forged signature. I snapped. His finger jabbed the air toward me. You can't keep saying that. It makes you sound, he hesitated, then delivered the word like a knife. Unstable. The silence after that was heavier than stone. Linda slid another document across the table. Her smile was gone now, replaced with something harder. We've spoken to medical professionals, Daniel, about brain injuries, about memory loss. Did you know trauma like yours can cause confusion, false memories, even personality changes? My breath caught. What are you saying? That you may not remember the decisions you made before your accident, she said gently, almost pitying. That you might genuinely believe these lies you're telling. And that's why we're here to help you. Margaret placed another sheet on top of the folder. This is a certification from Dr. Hendricks. He reviewed your case. He believes your memory impairment could make you unreliable when recalling agreements. This isn't malice, Daniel. It's medical. My knees almost buckled. I gripped the cane tighter just to stay upright. I've never even met Dr. Hendricks. Linda tilted her head. Maybe you don't remember. I wanted to scream, to flip the table, to shove their lies back down their throats. But the worst part was the calm, reasonable way they spoke. They weren't shouting. They weren't threatening in the traditional sense. They were framing me as the problem. Me, the unreliable narrator of my own life. Every sentence made me sound smaller, weaker, more confused. David leaned forward, voice rising. Do you understand the position you're putting us in? Contractors are owed money. Families have planned their summers around this beach. Local officials have praised you publicly. If you back out now, you don't just look like a liar, you look like a fraud. I swallowed hard. I am the victim of fraud. No, Linda said firmly. You're not. You're a man who suffered trauma, who gave something beautiful to his neighbors. And now, because of confusion, you're trying to take it back. We won't let you destroy your own reputation. Outside the window, the silhouettes had multiplied. Neighbors pressed closer, their faces curious, expectant. I could hear the murmur of voices, the occasional words slipping through. Selfish, ungrateful, crazy. I realized with a chill that made my bones ache that this wasn't just a meeting, it was theater, a performance for the crowd outside. They weren't here to convince me. They were here to frame me. Margaret's voice softened, but her words cut sharper than ever. Think of the children, Daniel. Little ones learning to swim at the beach you gave them. Teenagers playing volleyball on sand you approved. Elderly couples enjoying sunsets on the pier. Do you really want to be the man who takes that away? I clenched my jaw. My daughter's face flashed in my mind. Her joy at the pier, her pride in her project. They were using her too, whether they knew it or not. David stacked the papers neatly, his movements precise, like a judge pronouncing sentence. You have two options. Honor your commitments, or face legal consequences. Lawsuits, fines, possibly even guardianship hearings if it's determined you're no longer fit to manage your own affairs. I stared at them, my vision swimming. Guardianship hearings? Linda rose, smoothing her blazer. We'll give you a week to decide. But understand this, the community is watching. They know the hero you were. Don't disappoint them now. She glanced toward the window, and I followed her gaze. Dozens of eyes stared back, neighbors who had already chosen which version of me they preferred. Not me, not the broken veteran clinging to solitude. The other me, the saint, the fake. When they left, the silence they left behind was worse than their words. My house no longer felt like a home. It felt like a cage closing tighter by the day. And the truth pounding in my skull was unbearable. They didn't want the Real Daniel Cross anymore. They wanted the lie. And they would do anything to keep it alive. By the time the HOA left, I could barely breathe. Their words lingered in the air long after the door closed. Unstable, confused, legally incompetent. They weren't just stealing my lake. They were stealing me. That night, I sat at the kitchen table with Maya's tablet in front of me, its black screen reflecting a stranger's face, my own. My hands shook so badly I could barely hold the device steady. My heart was pounding, but not from fear anymore, from rage. If they wanted to destroy the Real Daniel Cross in private, fine. But if the lie lived online, then the truth would live there too. I hit go live. At first, only a dozen viewers trickled in, then 100, then thousands. Comments flashed across the screen. Wait, is this really him? Looks different than the videos. What's going on? I adjusted the camera so the lake was visible behind me, glowing under the floodlights they'd installed without my consent. The pavilions, the sand, the pier, the proof of the crime. My name is Daniel Cross. I began, my voice raw. Not the man you've been told about. Not the saint, not the donor, the real one. I paused, forcing air into my lungs. For months, someone has been living as me, forging my name, my words, even my face. I never gave this lake away. I never signed those papers. And I never spoke those speeches you've seen online. The comments exploded. Deep fake. Prove it. This is wild. So I did. I held up the folder, flipping page by page so the camera could see the forged agreements. These signatures? Perfect copies of mine. But I was in a coma when they were signed. These aren't contracts. They're crimes. My hand trembled as I spread the papers across the table. The ink glistened under the kitchen light. The viewer count ticked upward. 10,000, 50,000, 100,000. My throat tightened. I was exposing myself to the world, but I had no choice. Then, small footsteps approached. Maya. She climbed onto the chair beside me, clutching her stuffed bear, her eyes wide but steady. Daddy, she whispered. It's okay, I said softly, though it wasn't. They need to hear you too. And she spoke. Her voice was small, but it carried. She told the world how her father hated crowds. How he chose this house because he needed silence. How he got nervous at school plays and sat in the back where he could leave unnoticed. Her words were knives, not against me, but against the fake me. The generous extrovert they created online couldn't coexist with the truth only a daughter would know. The comments shifted. This doesn't match the story we've been told. Wait! This kid wouldn't lie. Something's off of the narrative. For the first time in months, I felt the tide turning. But then the chat erupted in a different way. A username flashed. Forensic Eyes 77. That video clip of you giving a speech? It's spliced from your military interviews. I just found the originals. They cut words and rearranged them. Another user chimed in. Audio analysis confirms synthetic voice generation. This is AI voice cloning. 99% match, but detectable. Then another. Metadata from one of your photos traces back to an IP address registered to, wait for it, Linda Barton's home network. The screen scrolled faster than I could read. Viewers weren't just watching. They were investigating in real time. Amateur detectives, digital forensics nerds, conspiracy theorists, all piecing together the puzzle. It was working. And then, bang, bang, bang. The pounding at my front door echoed so loud, even the live stream audience heard it. Comments exploded. Did you hear that? They're at his house. Maya gripped my arm. Daddy. Through the window, I saw shapes gathering. More neighbors. More shadows. Phones glowing like fireflies. Watching. Recording. The pounding grew louder. Someone shouted my name. I forced my voice steady, staring into the camera. Do you see this? Do you see what they're doing? They want to silence me. But not tonight. I picked up the forged papers again, slamming them down for emphasis. This is fraud. Identity theft. And it's happening in plain sight. The door rattled on its hinges. Maya's hand clutched mine. The camera trembled. And then, just as the feed hit 300,000 viewers, the screen glitched. Static. A stutter in the live stream. Someone was trying to shut me down. For a few terrifying seconds, I thought it was over, that the fake Daniel Cross had finally won. But the feed returned, stronger, sharper, the comments pouring in faster than ever. We see you, Daniel. Keep talking. We've got your back. This is bigger than just one lake. And in that moment, surrounded by strangers in my yard and thousands of allies online, I realized I wasn't alone anymore. The real Daniel Cross was finally being heard. But at what cost? Because if Linda and her allies had gone this far to create a fake me, what would they do now that the truth was escaping their control? When I finally ended the live stream, the viewer count had crossed 3 million. My kitchen looked like a war zone. Papers scattered, coffee stains bleeding into forged signatures. My daughter asleep against my arm with her stuffed bear clutched tight. But I wasn't alone anymore. The internet had smelled blood. By morning, forums buzzed with threads about me. Hashtags trended. Hashtag fake Daniel and hashtag lake fraud. Some thought it was a hoax. Others treated it like the crime thriller of the decade. Amateur detectives, conspiracy buffs, even retired investigators picked apart every frame of my live stream. And the cracks widened. One user matched my supposed community speech to a grainy military interview I'd given in Kandahar. They lined up the audio side by side, my words about sacrifice for comrades spliced into sermons about sharing a lake. Another discovered inconsistencies in the social media accounts. Posts supposedly written during my coma referenced news, events that hadn't happened yet. A timeline error, subtle but fatal. Someone else traced metadata in the fake photos. The edits weren't flawless, after all. Timestamps revealed images had been manipulated weeks after they were supposedly taken. A background shadow that didn't match the light. A reflection in a window that showed equipment. Green screens, rigs, props. The conclusion was undeniable. The Daniel Cross online wasn't just a fabrication. He was a production. And then the experts came. A digital forensics specialist uploaded a breakdown proving my voice had been cloned using AI synthesis software. He circled waveforms, highlighting artifacts that betrayed synthetic speech. Another analyst showed how handwriting forgeries could be generated with advanced robotic pens, expensive but indistinguishable from real signatures. Piece by piece, the lie unraveled. The most damning evidence came late that night. A cybersecurity expert traced logins from the fake accounts back to a single IP address, Linda Barton's home. The internet erupted. Screenshots flooded my inbox. People demanded answers. News outlets picked up the story within hours. HOA president implicated in bizarre identity theft scheme. For the first time, the mask slipped. The next morning, 2 men in suits knocked on my door. Not neighbors. Not journalists. FBI. They flashed badges, so quickly I barely processed the names. Mr. Cross, we need to talk. My throat went dry. About the live stream? About everything. They sat in my living room, notepad and recorder ready, while Maya hovered in the hallway, clutching her bear. I wanted to shield her from all of this, but hiding the truth had already done enough damage. Mr. Cross, the taller agent began, the scale of this case goes far beyond one property dispute. We're looking at multiple layers. Forged documents, stolen identity, AI manipulation, interstate wire fraud. We believe this may be tied to a larger organized network. I gripped my cane tighter. So it's not just me? Unlikely. Schemes like this rarely target one person. We've seen fragments of similar cases in other states. But yours, he glanced at the recorder, yours is the most complete we've encountered. Someone built an alternate life for you. That takes resources, money, connections. The shorter agent leaned forward. We need your cooperation. Evidence, timelines, anything you have. The live stream was a start, but if this goes to trial, we'll need more. I shoved the folder across the table. Start with this. Forged contracts. Notarized. Filed at the courthouse. They flipped through the pages, their brows tightening. One of them muttered, "Damn, this is clean work." I wanted to laugh. Clean work. As if ruining a man's life with surgical precision deserved admiration. News trucks appeared that afternoon, parking along the dead-end road that had once been my refuge. Cameras pointed at my house, reporters eager to film the disgraced veteran or the wronged homeowner, whichever narrative sold better. Neighbors whispered, half supportive, half suspicious. Some apologized. Others hissed selfish under their breath. Kids still played on the sand as if the beach belonged to them. Through it all, I felt hollow. Vindicated, but hollow. Because proving the fraud didn't erase the damage. Maya's classmates still thought her dad was a generous man online. Families still built memories on land that wasn't theirs. And every time I saw my forged smile in a photo I never posed for, I wonder how much of me was left to save. That night, I checked the forums again. Evidence was piling higher than I could process. Users tracked money trails, shell companies, fake accounts. Transfers linked back to HOA board members. Others identified voice synthesis, software registered to developers connected with shady consulting firms. And then came the message that chilled me. A retired law enforcement officer posted in bold. This isn't just fraud. This is organized theft. They've done this before. They'll do it again. My hand trembled on the mouse. Because if they could build a better Daniel Cross once, what stopped them from doing it again? To me, to Maya, to anyone. 2 days later, the FBI returned with a search warrant. Linda Barton's home was swarmed. Agents carried out hard drives, boxes of files, servers humming like stolen hearts. Cameras caught her in handcuffs, her smile gone, her eyes wild. Margaret Walsh and David Chin weren't far behind. Neighbors stood in stunned silence as the pillars of their community were marched into unmarked cars. Justice. At least the beginning of it. But as the flashing lights faded and the crowd dispersed, I couldn't shake the unease gnawing at me. This wasn't over. Linda and her allies weren't masterminds. They were branches. Leaves on a tree whose roots ran far deeper. And if the FBI was right, those roots stretched across states, maybe across the country. I stared out at my lake, its surface reflecting the moon like a cracked mirror. For the first time, I realized I wasn't just fighting for my land. I was fighting for my name, and maybe for the very idea of truth itself. The morning after Linda's arrest, my driveway looked like a crime scene and a carnival rolled into one. Federal agents stood guard while neighbors gathered in tight clusters, whispering like spectators at a public hanging. News crews parked along the shoulder of the dead-end road, their vans glowing with satellite dishes. Cameras pointed at my house. My house. For the first time in months, the words didn't feel like a lie. On television, the story spun out like wildfire. HOA president charged in sophisticated identity theft scheme. Fake community hero exposed as victim of fraud. Lake donation hoax unravels in shocking arrests. Every headline carried my name. But for once, it wasn't tied to the saint they'd invented. It was tied to the man who'd been stolen. The FBI's press conference confirmed what the online sleuths had already uncovered. Forged documents, deepfake videos, AI clone audio, all orchestrated by Barton and her inner circle. They weren't acting alone. There were shell companies, outside contractors, even digital specialists who provided the tools. For the world, it was a jaw-dropping scandal. For me, it was vindication, but hollow, like winning a marathon only to collapse at the finish line. That afternoon, Margaret Walsh was let out her home in handcuffs, lips pressed in, her head bowed as if in prayer. David Chin followed, shouting about misunderstood intentions, his words drowned by the camera's shutters. The neighborhood was divided. Some rushed to me with tears in their eyes, apologizing for believing the lie, for calling me selfish, for doubting my sanity. Others glared from across the road, arms crossed, muttering about how I'd ruined something beautiful. One man spat at the ground near my fence. Kids were happy, Daniel. Families were together. You took that away. I wanted to scream back. It was never yours to take. But exhaustion weighed heavier than anger. Federal marshals supervised the dismantling of the beach project. The imported sand was bulldozed, its pristine whiteness mixing with the mud underneath. Pavilions were stripped bare, beams hauled away piece by piece. The volleyball net sagged before collapsing entirely, trampled underwork boots. The wooden pier splintered as chains dragged it from the water, waves swallowing its remains. And finally, the monument, that cursed sign by my mailbox, thanking me for a donation I never gave. I insisted on tearing out myself. I gripped the crowbar with aching hands, prying wood from earth. With each crack, each groan of splintering timber, I felt the weight lift. When it toppled, I shoved it to the ground and stood over it, chest heaving. For months, that sign had been my gravestone. Now it was rubble. The courts moved swiftly. Restitution was ordered, compensation for damages, legal fees, emotional distress. Barton lost her home, her accounts seized. Walsh and Chin followed. The HOA dissolved overnight, its assets liquidated, its legacy shattered. The headlines screamed victory. The internet cheered. But victory tasted bitter. Because even as I walked across my reclaimed shoreline, even as the silence returned, I couldn't forget the faces of children playing in the sand, the way Maya's eyes had lit up at the pier. The fraud was gone, but so was their joy. And some neighbors never forgave me. They gathered outside my fence, shouting selfish into the night. Their voices carried over the water like curses. To them, I wasn't a victim of fraud. I was the villain who'd stolen their summer. Maya saw it differently. She stood beside me on the deck as federal contractors hauled away the last pavilion beam. "Does this mean it's ours again?" she asked softly. I knelt, gripping her shoulders. "It was always ours, Maya. No one can change that." She nodded, but her face clouded. "People are mad at you. At us. They're mad at the truth," I said. "Sometimes that happens." She looked out at the lake. Quiet for a moment. Then she said something that broke me in ways no forged document ever could. "I liked it better when everyone was happy, even if it was a lie." That night, I sat on the porch alone, Kane resting against my chair, the lake whispering under the moonlight. For the first time since my accident, it was quiet. No laughter. No volleyballs. No chants of my name twisted into worship. Just the water. Just the wind. Just mine. But the quiet didn't feel like peace anymore. It felt like aftermath. Because lies can be dismantled. Fraud can be prosecuted. But the scars, the suspicion, the doubt, the fracture in community and in a family, those remain. The next morning, a letter arrived in the mail. Not official, not legal, just handwritten on plain paper. Congratulations on your win, but you've only cut down the branches. The roots are still alive. We'll be back. No signature. I crushed the paper in my fist, staring out at the lake. The pretenders had fallen, but the game wasn't over. And deep down, I knew the fight had only just begun. 6 months had passed since the arrests. 6 months since the sand was bulldozed, the pavilions dismantled, the sign ripped from the earth. 6 months since the world had learned that the hero of Sunset Shores was nothing but a fabrication. And still every morning, I woke up expecting to hear voices outside my window. Children laughing, neighbors grilling, applause that wasn't meant for me. But there was nothing, just the quiet I had once prayed for. The quiet I had bought this house to protect. It was mine again. Maya and I had rebuilt the pier by hand, plank by plank. It was smaller than the one they'd built, crooked in places, but it was ours. Every nail hammered with her laughter beside me. Every board laid with her small hands steadying the wood. One afternoon, she stood at the edge of the pier, fishing pole in hand, her bare feet dangling above the water. "Do you think they'll ever come back?" she asked. "Who?" I said. "The neighbors, the kids, the people who thought the lake was theirs." I shook my head, not without permission. "And this time, it'll be my choice, not theirs." Her brow furrowed. "Will you let them?" The question twisted inside me. I thought of the children who'd learned to swim in the stolen sand, the families who'd made memories in my backyard under false pretenses. They weren't the criminals. They were victims, too, of Linda Barton's schemes, of the false Daniel Cross. "I'll think about it," I said finally. "Maybe some weekends in the summer. Under rules I set, with agreements written honestly this time." She smiled. "I think that would be nice." We used some of the restitution money to build a treehouse in the oak overlooking the lake. It was crooked like the pier, but strong. Maya painted the walls with her own drawings. Ducks, kayaks, little stick figures of us standing on the shore. "Now it's really ours," she declared, arms spread wide as if she owned the whole world. Watching her climb up the ladder, hair flying in the breeze, I realized something I hadn't before. The fight wasn't just about land or water. It was about memory. About making sure Maya grew up with the truth, not a lie carved in bronze or printed online. But even with the victories, the fractures remained. Some neighbors still avoided us. At the grocery store, I heard whispers, selfish, paranoid, unstable. No court ruling could erase their resentment. And sometimes, late at night, I caught Maya scrolling through old videos of the fake me. Her brow furrowed, her lips pressed tight. "Why do they like it more?" she asked once, not looking at me. I didn't have an answer. One evening, we sat on the deck together, watching the sun set over water that was finally calm. "Daddy," Maya said quietly, "are we safe now?" I looked at her, at the innocence still clinging to her despite everything she'd been dragged through. "Yes," I said, though the word fell heavy. "We're safe." But even as I said it, I knew safety was fragile, because the truth had come out. But truth has enemies. And somewhere out there, in the dark corners of the internet, the fake Daniel Cross still lived. Screenshots, quotes, videos clipped and shared without context. The ghost of the man they built in my image lingered, harder to erase than any pavilion or pier. That night, I planted a new sign at the end of the driveway. Simple wooden planks, carved by my own hands. Cross Lake, private property. By permission only. No bronze. No plaques. No signatures but my own. It wasn't about keeping people out. It was about making sure once and for all that the story of this place was mine again. As I hammered the last nail, Maya stood beside me, holding the flashlight. "This time," she said, "nobody can steal it." I ruffled her hair, smiling despite the weight in my chest. "That's the idea." Later, sitting by the fire pit with the lake whispering against the shore, I thought about everything I'd lost and everything I'd reclaimed. Silence, solitude, My name. My daughter's trust. The fake me was gone, dismantled. The community's illusion shattered. And yet, as I stared into flames, I knew the story wasn't finished. Because lies don't die easy. They root deep, spread far, and bloom again when you least expect it. And the letter I kept hidden in my drawer, the one warning me that Linda's scheme was only one branch of a larger tree, still sat there waiting for the moment it would prove true. For now, the lake was mine. But survival had taught me one thing. Peace is temporary. And somewhere beyond the tree line, I could almost feel the eyes watching. The envelope came on a gray morning, tucked beneath the mailbox flag like it had been waiting for me all night. No return address. No stamp. Just my name scrawled in block letters across the front. I froze. Maya was already halfway down the driveway, backpack bouncing as she hummed to herself, heading toward the school bus. I forced a smile, waved goodbye, waited until the bus carried her away in a cloud of diesel smoke, and only then did I pick it up. The paper inside was plain. Typed, not handwritten. Linda's downfall was just the beginning. You've cut off one branch, but the tree still grows. You've made powerful enemies. Daniel Cross. Watch your back. My hand clenched so tightly the letter crumpled. For a long time, I just stood there, the wind pushing against me, the lake silent behind the trees. Enemies. Plural. I burned the letter in the fire pit that night, watched the paper curl into black flakes and lift into the darkness. But destroying the evidence didn't destroy the feeling. The unease crept into every corner of the house. At dinner, I found myself glancing at the windows, half expecting to see a figure standing outside. In bed, I kept the lamp on, listening for footsteps that never came. Every knock at the door made my pulse hammer like a drum. The silence I had once cherished now carried menace. Each creak of the floorboards a possible intruder, each whisper of window warning. A week later, the signs began. The gate at the end of my driveway, unlocked, swinging open though I'd bolted it tight, a photo slipped under my door. Me and Maya at the treehouse, taken from the woods. My truck alarm shrieking in the middle of the night. No one in sight when I stagger outside with a cane in one hand and a flashlight in the other. It wasn't the community this time. It wasn't neighbors or HOA. This was something else. Something bigger. I tried to keep it from Maya, but children see more than we think. One night she crawled into my bed, eyes wide, voice trembling. Daddy, if someone could pretend to be you, could they pretend to be me too? Her question nearly broke me. I pulled her close, swore it could never happen. But deep down I wasn't sure. If they could forge me so perfectly, down to the curl of a signature and the tremor of a voice, then what stopped them from forging anyone? What if the next version of me wasn't online, but in the flesh? Another man walking my streets, talking to my daughter, wearing my face better than I ever could? I started leaving lights on all night. A motion camera pointed at the lake. Locks doubled, tripled. Paranoia, some would say. But paranoia had saved my life before. And late one evening, as I sat on the deck with the cane resting against my chair, I heard it. Footsteps. Soft. Careful. From the tree line. I gripped the flashlight. Heart hammering. Scanning the woods. Branches shifted. Leaves rustled. Nothing. But I knew better. The letter wasn't a threat. It was a promise. The world thought the story was over. Linda Barton and her cronies lock away. Restitution paid. The lake restored. The headlines had moved on. The internet found new scandals. But the truth? The story hadn't ended. It had just changed hands. Tonight, I'm sitting by the fire pit again. The lake rippling under a half moon. Maya is asleep inside. Safe for now. The crickets sing. The water laps. And somewhere I know eyes are watching. Maybe they're waiting for me to slip. Maybe they're waiting to replace me again. Maybe they're waiting to see if the real Daniel Cross can survive twice. I lift my glass, stare into the flames, and whisper no one. You'll have to do better than last time. Because I'm ready now. Ready for the next lie. Ready for the next battle. Ready for whoever thinks they can steal me again. And if you're still here listening, watching, ask yourself this. If you woke up tomorrow and found the world believed in a version of you that wasn't real, what would you do?
Thanks for watching the HOA web. Share this video with someone who loves a good plot twist. And don't forget to subscribe.